So before I start again, this is Martin Maricle. I'm the co-chair of the National Logistics Group representing the states. And I've been with the Division of Forestry for 35 years. My anniversary with the state was March 3rd recently. And so I'm also in an area command position and been doing logistics as logistics chief since 1983. So here we go. We're going to talk a little bit about fire support in Canada. Some very interesting and unique opportunities if you ever get the chance to go there. It's a whole nother country out there. So, first of all, there's different types of mobilizations that you may experience. The state people will have you might be ordered as a single resource, or perhaps you might be going out as part of or with a whole incident management team mobilized through the Northwest Compact. I just put the abbreviation there, the NWC, the Northwest Compact. One of the things I failed to mention when we were talking about the updates for the state is that there are a lot of state-to-state compacts, such as the South has a compact, we have the Northwest Compact and so forth. Northwest Compact for states includes Idaho, Montana, Oregon, Washington, Alaska, and then several Canadian provinces, including the Northwest Territories, British Columbia, several mostly western provinces. It doesn't go all the way back to the East Coast. So, or you might be part of an incident management team. Wait a minute, showing my screen. Thank you. I made that mistake. My apologies. Or you might be mobilized as part of through the Canadian Interagency Fire Coordination Center through NIC. So it's possible that orders themselves come through the regular ordering process when Canada is looking for major help. All right. So what kind of things might you find out when you're being mobilized? These are important points that you want to get clarified because you're going to Canada. You're not going to the United States. So don't assume that whatever you're used to is going to be covered in payment or anything else. Some of the things you'd want to have clarified: are you going to be using a vehicle? Are you going to be authorized to rent a vehicle? And if so, who's picking that up? Would that be the Canadian host where you're going that might pick it up? What about per diem and travel? Are you actually authorized per diem? And if so, at what time would that kick in and when would that stop? One of the things in Canada that they really seem to be trying to keep the cost down, and so they might have someone meet you at the airport to pick you up and give you a vehicle maybe, and perhaps you're going to be given you might be given meals. They'll find restaurants and have all the overhead eat in this restaurant because they're really not wanting to give people per diem a lot of times. If it's the travel arrangements, who are making the travel arrangements? Is your home dispatch going to do that, or the Canadians going to do that? Sometimes the route might be really convoluted. It might be hard to get to Canada from where you are in the United States. Even when we went down to the Northwest Territories from Alaska, there were no flights that go directly from Alaska to Canada, so we had to go all the way to Seattle and then back up again. So it was a pretty enhanced travel plan. What about cell phone issues? If you are authorized to bring a cell phone, I put a little bullet there about very good idea to sign up for an international dialing plan because it's going to be way cheaper than coming back and finding out you have a $1,400 cell phone bill, because that has happened to people from Alaska going to Canada. So extremely high roaming charges, so be a real good consideration if you're authorized to have a cell phone to sign up for an international plan. You can activate it for a 1-month period and then deactivate it. Cost about, I think, something like that, but it beats the heck out of another plan. Okay. Canadian paperwork may differ from what you're used to with the ICS system. one of the biggest differences is the resource request form. They have their own little pads where you fill in the type of information you're looking for, and I would say that the ordering process is probably a lot less formal than the United States. So you would have to use the request form instead of having regular resource orders. You might be involved in the logistics chief position or whatnot, developing a medical plan. So they use they do use a version of an ICS 206. But one of the things there that would be important is you would need that local knowledge about what exactly are they going to do with the patients, where are they going, and who's taking care of the medical treatment of patients on scene. A lot of times they use contractors to do the medical patient care. You get involved with developing the communication plan, the 205. One thing that's interesting instead of just using a NIFC starter kit or what. They are. Big difference in Canada, incident management teams are very small. They fight fire with a very small number of people on very large fires. An example is, I think I might say that later on. Occurring there. So they have huge fires and very limited resources because that's the way they fight. They have differences even in the way they configure their crews. If you say you want some crews, a crew in Canada is likely to be a 5-person crew. That's what they mean by crew. And then they meld them in together into a module, so a 10-person module or a 20-person module. So on large fires, where they call in incident management teams, there's a good chance you're going to be working with 20-person modules, so it's like what we're used to, 20-person crews. But essentially that would be 4 crews, and each crew has a crew leader. In Canada, the cost considerations are very important, and a lot of times a lot of the resource orders are going to be reviewed by somebody else. And you might think you need things and you might want to get things, but when you place your order, a lot of times people will be scrutinizing those orders and you may get very little of what you wanted, if anything. They're reluctant to mobilize additional personnel because they do things quite differently. Canadian firefighters, I have some slides here when I'm done with this presentation that I'll blow through real quickly. But a lot of agency personnel come from the provinces and the territories. So the government people that are agency people go out, they're mobilized through their home units, and they wear different color uniforms either. They're wearing the orange or the red jumpsuits and fire shirts. And the EFF, okay, they also have some smoke jumpers there that you rarely see, but they do have a smoke jumper program. And then they use quite a few emergency firefighters to augment their force. They're like an auxiliary unit. They have very little training, and a lot of times they kind of come off the street practically, and they pick them up as laborers, and they go out there for 14-day assignments. They're strict on the 14-day assignment things. So the other odd thing that I've worked with a couple times in Canada is when they get rid of EFF, they just do it on a moment's notice. They don't even give them, well, let's work them till the end of the shift. Well, how about we work them till 10 o'clock and it's 9:30. Well, how about noon? Give them some notice. So, IMT support personnel. This is one of the more difficult challenges you may be faced with if you are mobilized as part of a team or even bringing your team. the Canadian qualification system is not really tied into NWCG standards. In other words, when they say people are qualified to do something, then they are qualified to do something. They're the line officers and so forth. Support personnel might not be qualified, what we would consider, but the local managers are really big on saying, oh yeah, that Jane is a fire clerk, she's really good, she can do that, she can be a time unit leader. Or so-and-so is a warehouse guy in Inupiat, and therefore he's a supply unit leader. And so when you're a logistics chief, you have to realize these people may not be very well qualified, and it does create some real challenges because there's a fair amount of work lining them out and tracking the resources because they don't have the experience that we're used to dealing with in the red carded positions. Facilities management. This is kind of a cool thing as a logistics chief. They often will have a contractor that's responsible for setting up the whole camp. The incident command post, the base camp. They may handle the cooking, the meal planning, setting up the dining facilities. They bring in lots of ATCO trailers a lot of times, and they use those as shower units, wash stations, and so forth inside ATCO trailers. The ATCO trailers is a standard that they used in oil fields and so forth, just a square trailer with different facilities inside of it. They also, the contractor may be sometimes responsible for providing lodging accommodations, especially when you're out in the sticks and they're housing pilots as an example and some overhead, but the initial attack people are often in the woods in a trailer camp situation. But sometimes, especially in British Columbia, they may set up wall tents or weather ports on elevated wooden platforms for the crews, and they have cots in there and whatnot. The crews are camping inside wall tents instead of just throwing up their own regular personal tents. Now in Northwest Territories, they're a little bit more rugged there. They don't bring in the wall tents, but in the contractors in British Columbia get more into the crew support. We'll have some slides of that here in a minute. Other facilities management things. You may be the jack of all trades if you're the logistics chief, and you might end up having to determine rough numbers of feeding. If you have housing situations set up, you might be the one doing the motel management, who gets to stay in what rooms, and in addition to the overhead and the pilots that we're taking care of, if it's a contractor run operation, they have their own people they have to house. So you have to work with the contractor to figure out how many rooms are ours and how many are theirs and who's staying where. It was complicated. You might be involved with monitoring meal times and the quality of the meals. Get involved with relocating camps or possibly establishing new camps, and that could mean working with another contractor to set up a new camp or whatnot. Might be involved with documenting meal logs, looking at the menus, and they don't have the same standards that we have in our national catering contracts regarding what's required for feeding and so forth. So a lot of it's up to the kitchen manager and the bull cook to determine what they're going to be serving. Some provinces have standing contractors to deal with camps, that's what they do. Like in British Columbia a few years ago, I worked with Summit Logistics. That was just an example. I'm not endorsing them because I said their name. Other provinces, the contracting officer might use companies with experience supporting logging or mining industries. And when I say the contracting officer, that's kind of a loose term. That could be someone at the provincial office or at the fire center who's responsible for procurement. So they're the ones who set everything up. And you as a logistics chief just tell them what it is you need and when you need it. Supply. Local caches might have very few supplies on hand. Operations may need to move pumps from one location to another. So, for instance, on the fire I was on, the Kakisa complex, we had these initial attack kits, and they were having to move everything all the time, going in there and taking out pumps and sprinkler systems that were set up from one place and moving it somewhere else because that's the way they do things. And the crews themselves are used to dealing with these shortages. So one of the things you'd have to try to do is establish a supply and distribution system, because things are fairly loose, and you kind of want to have an idea where things went to and keep track of it. But sometimes you're going to have to do a whole lot of this by yourself. Accountability may be hard to achieve. The main thing I was worried about as a logistics chief is radios and somewhat pumps, but pumps were sort of a loosely thrown around thing. They're hard to tell where they were and where they went. They have an initial attack kit that has a pump in it, and they were constantly robbing the pump and sending it somewhere. So it's hard to anticipate the need and get what you want. You might have to be responsible for tracking and distributing the radios. That is definitely one thing that you would want to have a pretty good handle on, where it went and who it went to, not the place that it went, because the people are changing sometimes. Very like I say, you may have inexperienced personnel working in supply. I would say it's more of a given. You will have inexperienced personnel working in supply. Maybe they have a whiteboard in a trailer and they're writing down inventory twice a day, that type of thing. It's kind of like going back about 30 years probably for us. Supply unit might get involved with mixing your own fuel, and that can be challenging when you have inexperienced people with no operational experience. We had people who put diesel in the too much, like a straight diesel, going out and mixing cans and so forth. So diesel was going into the pump and fouling it up. And sometimes gasoline was put into a diesel engine, but luckily not very often. So supplies are often sent. The local managers might be reluctant as all get out to purchase additional supplies. So you may have the best plan in the world, but if they're not willing to do it, you have to come up with alternate plans. One thing that's real good to deal with is the crews themselves are flexible. So they're pretty, and then you might have to come up with creative alternatives to what it is that you need to get done and where you're going to find it and where you're going to get it. The resource request forms are often sent directly to the local fire center. So a guy that works there in this little warehouse suddenly becomes the supporting logistics office for the whole fire, even though he's got very limited experience. Some local guy that's 19, 20 years old or whatnot. Communications. One thing that's kind of unique is crews are required to check in every 2 hours, especially in British Columbia. And this is sort of a Canadian OSHA requirement. It's not something that started in the fire world. And they're required to check in, their crew number, operations normal. And sometimes it takes 45 minutes to go through everybody because there's a lot of resources out there. So every 2 hours they're checking in as a positive check on where people are. You might have a pretty simple commo plan where you're taking the frequencies right out of their Canadian mobilization guide and so forth. The comm unit leader or comm coordinator or the comm whoever, the communist, is coming out there and setting up communication and then leaving, because there might be a whole lot of fire activity and they don't have enough personnel to just assign someone to your complex maybe. Ground support. A lot of times very few vehicles may be available, and you as a logistics chief might be the guy or gal that determines who's going to get what vehicles assigned and how are you going to get everyone out to the line and when are you going to do it. You have to work with ops and everyone else on making this work. Logistics chief may have to develop the whole transportation plan of delivering the personnel out there, and especially when you're transitioning from one team to the other. Well, where the heck are all the rigs? Well, they took it with them, so you have to make arrangements, have to have good communication. Determine the most appropriate fueling methodology. Medical. A lot of times you might just have a couple of contract medics to support the entire incident. That's what you got. You might be involved yourself in the medics often do help write the medical plan and update it and put in the name, so they take some load off of you as a logistics chief. The medics out there would administer first aid and help transport personnel during medevacs or non-emergency medical transports. And typically, if there's 2 or 3 of them, one of them has more experience, so they kind of determine who the lead medic is, and that's kind of like who your medical unit leader is, so to speak. They're fairly independent. They just kind of like, you know, as a logistics chief, you kind of go, okay, you know, whatever. You just kind of keep tabs on making sure you have enough to meet the needs of the incident. Some take-home thoughts. Really important if you end up going to Canada to be flexible and not rigid. You know, we are there to do the job for the Canadians. So the Canadians are the boss, and even though sometimes we had people overseeing everything we did and cutting everything we ordered, you just have to do the best you can and deal with it. You'd better not plan on having a lot of qualified help. What you kind of have to do is back to the be flexible. Take a look at what you got and how might you best be able to use their talents in a way that will, you know, minimize any harm or, you know, try to establish some kind of accountability. And very important point, just because you don't have the personnel to do what you think you need to get done because you can't, oh, I'm a manager, I don't do that. Guess what? You're in Canada. You better do that. You're going to be responsible ultimately for providing the services needed to get the job done. So you might end up humping cargo, or you might just do driving people around, or whatever's needed. Most important job there, if you're a logistics chief, is anticipating what's needed, determining how to get it, and then distributing and tracking what you have. You might not have, this is something that I told my IC is, you know what, the only thing I can get done here is finding out what you need, getting it to the line, but I don't have a whole lot of time to write stories about it. I don't have a lot of time to do unit logs and so forth. So it made me feel a little bit nervous, but the idea here, keep costs down, back to being flexible. Remember, you're not in the U.S. anymore, so learn to do things the Canadian way. It might mean finding out, okay, well, what are you used to here? What exactly, how do we go about getting this stuff? Ask questions if you don't understand local or Canadian terminology. They have the first one up there, Bowser. What in the heck is a Bowser? A Bowser is a fuel tender that would be needed to either for fueling vehicles or whatnot, or perhaps even an aircraft fueler, you know, with jet fuel. So they call that fuel tender a Bowser. And of course, we use the Canadian Forest Fire Danger Rating System instead of the NFDRS. So if you need to get involved in what that means, you could have the Canadians help you with that. Big time important thing is we're there to serve the needs of operational personnel, just like in the lower 48 and Alaska. Important to get, before you head to Canada, get a metric conversion app for your smartphone if you have a smartphone, so you can understand what the heck they're talking about with hectares and imperial gallons and kilometers or even Canadian money. What does it all mean? All right, I wanted to do a real quick slideshow before I turn this over to Sue for the ICPI, and I hope you find this interesting. This is our, I was mentioning the different kind of firefighters. The fellow in the red shirt is the incident commander from Ontario. The people over there behind him in orange are firefighters from Canada, from Ontario also, that came out with modules. They do like we do when we're mobilizing jet loads of crews, is they sometimes put together jet loads from a province and bring you people. So they're doing the morning briefing just like in the lower 48, just like on our regular fires. And the guy in the yellow shirt there is an EFF. They have fire shirts just like our you know, ADs and EFF. They're the only ones that wear the yellow fire shirts. This guy's from the Northwest Territory, the 3 of them there, just pickups, EFF. There's me, the short guy with the orange vest. Oh, I wanted to put this up. It's hard to read. This is a 28-pack of AAA batteries for $38.99 for 28 AAA batteries. So things are expensive. That's one of the reasons why they monitor costs. Bunch of hose like this you'd see on our fires being ready to be shipped out and sent back. We keep it in camp because we may have to redistribute it and use it on the line. The watermelons. Here's initial tack kits with the pump that they would pull out of there. One time I tried to get, 6 pumps, and they acted like I was trying to rob the crown jewels or whatnot, and they finally gave me 4 pumps without kits. What do you mean no kits? How are we going to use the pumps? Well, that's what I can give you. Okay. So this is our little warehouse. Not much in it. There they're keeping track of the supplies. There's the supply unit. Guys come in there and drop off tools and get more. So this is an interesting deal. On a fire of that size, everyone had to build their own sack lunch. So they had mountains of food. That stuff there, click, that's what they call spam in Canada, click. Donuts, lots of sweet rolls, all of this food that you would use like supplemental food. Well, this is what you use to build your sack lunches, and juices, and lots of fresh fruit, and grapes, fresh fruit, milk. They're just drinking that when they're coming in. Oh, the contractor also provided bottled water. So we were working out of a Atco trailer, and there were offices on each side. And this is my own private bedroom that I got to have as a logistics chief. This is a way cool deal. But there's more. I had my own little sink, and up the stairs in there was a little, what is that? Are you kidding me? A jacuzzi. Never been on a fire before with a jacuzzi. Don't expect to again. We're actually using barreled fuel instead of having a Bowser or a fuel bladder transfer pumps. Barreled fuel. Heck of a lot of work. Everything in Canada is in is in French and English. Here are some mini cornu copain, also known as baby dills. So I just threw this one up quickly to show you the cost of per diem there. Yukon breakfast, $15.85, lunch $19.20, dinner $50.85. Northwest Territory, $22 for a breakfast. This is per diem. $23.75 for lunch, and $54.10. So we consider this pretty high. In Alaska, our whole daily per diem is $60. Oh, there's where the deer and the buffalo roam. That was the buffalo. They had wood bison there, mixing their own fuel barrels for pump rigs. This is a Bowser. This is the Heli-Tac trailer. More food. Watermelon. Okay, this is our office trailer. And they do, like I said, they use a lot of these Atco trailers. That's what they look like. Wall tents for crews. And communication, they often will bring out a trailer for the incident management team to communicate with. They have the radios built in and the antennas and all that. And there's Wally Bennett, was an IC on one of the fires I was with, international incident management team, because he's a state guy too. Okay, a lot of put together things, and that's another wall tent city, and with the platforms underneath to keep them dry and off the ground. And that is all I have, and I'm going to go ahead and bring up Sue's deal so she can do her presentation. And I put it in here, day 1, and that was the right here, right?
Yes.
Would you like to sit here?
Sure. Well, it doesn't matter.
Okay. And slideshow.
Can everyone hear me?
Oh, everyone's on mute.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Josh, can you hear Sue? Let's see. Hold on a minute.
Yep, I can hear.
Let me go look at the attendees. I'm going to call them. Okay, very good. Thank you.
We can hear you.
Good.
My name is Sue Zahn. I'm the Contract Operations Program Manager here in Region 5. I oversee all the Viper agreements for hired contracts. once again for Fire and Aviation Management. I work at the regional office. I'm a Type 1 logs chief. I'm a logs trainee on area command, and I oversee the logistics for the region. That includes our academy and our LAD program. It's the Logistics Accelerated Development Program, and it's trying to get folks through the various quals to get to the Type 2 logistics chief level. So one of the good things that we have here in the States is the new program, Incident Contract Project Inspector, or known as the ICPI. One of the difficulties that I had in Canada was vendors don't report or check in like they do here on our incidents. So tracking them was really hard. And thank goodness for the ICPI, it's really helped support that aspect of our incidents.
Oops.
So this just gives you an example from 2009 to 2014 how large and active the ramping up of Viper agreements. So between this time we went and we have approximately a little over 6,000 Viper agreements, and this is nationally, and close to 20,000 resources, so equipment and services on a national basis. So it's jumped up quite a bit, and I see that it's going to continue to grow in certain resource categories. And this slide was given to me by Shane LaValle, who's with FISA, and he'll be joining us tomorrow with a really good update on the Viper program itself. And this is just the solicitation schedule. Every agreement that we have nationally goes out, and it's for 3 years, and at the end of 3 years we'll resolicit. During the 3-year time, it'll be a 1 year, one time a year there'll be what we call the rollover. It gives the opportunities to change out equipment, personnel, costs, etc. So again, Shane will go over a little of this, but I just wanted to give some perspective on how big this program is. So this year, for ours and regional templates, included the gray water, trailer-mounted hand wash, laundry, portable toilet, and that includes the accessible and the hand washing stations. And then you can see who has the local templates. But this shows you just in 1 year, we're going to 6 brand new solicitations, and then in my region here we have 20 rollover agreements. So the Incident Contract Project Inspector, it was established in April of 2012. It started to get its development. And it was developed by a core group of people throughout the nation. There was the different regions were represented. And it's now become an NWCG course. It's got the 262, and there is a qualification process with a task book. What the ICPI can do for the incident, they serve as the subject matter experts for our agreements and contracts. Their authority is not delegated like a COR, but it's expected that the person understands it can refer to the contract. This is someone you want to have on your incident to kind of help decipher, and they can be a support to both the incident and the vendor if there's a misunderstanding of what is part of the minimum specifications of their agreement. So, and they can confer with the COR and the CO and the finance section chief on that incident to help them. They don't demob equipment that does not pass inspection. They don't have that authority. So what they do is they make the recommendations to the incident and try to work with the vendor to get them up to par. If not, then they can further it up the chain to the CO. So duties and responsibilities. The ICPIs, they're the on-the-ground resource that is the liaison for the contractors and agency personnel. We're really big, and they're not out to bust vendors. They're out to ensure that they're successful. If they're successful, then the troops on the ground are getting what they need in that equipment and services. They perform incident compliance inspections of contracted resources. That's the most important aspect of their assignment. They're the first line support for issues as they arise during the incident, and they can uncover and gather documentation that may or may not be used in future claim settling or concerns that the CO might have. They establish clear lines of communication from the incident up to the CO if necessary. They attend daily shift briefings. They assist with clarifications in our agreements. They maintain an up-to-date unit log. They assist the supervisor, like myself in my program, and I can work directly with the CO. And especially, we're there to resolve those disagreements or some of the confusing language that might be found in some of the agreements. and they work for the procurement leader or the finance section chief on the incident when they're specifically assigned to an incident. They document and report noncompliance. They inform the incident supervisor, the management team, personnel of significant problems. They ensure performance evaluations are completed, and those are especially important now because those weigh in on all agreements now. And at the end of the incident, they forward documentation to the program manager or the contracting officer. They can help you out to confirm order equipment is correct. As per the dispatch priority list, our DPLs and the resource order. We've had vendors that try to switch out equipment that has a higher daily rate from a different dispatch location. So they're the ones that can catch that and correct it. They support the incidents on compliance inspections and or contract interpretation. And basically they're the incidents resource to contact if there's any questions, concerns on various agreements or contracts. The ICP does not perform mechanical inspections. They don't work in ground support. They don't look at the OF 296 that many of us are familiar with. They don't make contractual decisions or payment interpretations. They don't make monetary promises or solicit claims. And they determine needs of the incident. In Region 5, I ran into this, and I don't recommend it, is that you have an equipment inspector and they're qualified as an ICPI trying to do both positions. The difficulty comes where the authorities of each position are different. So you've got an equipment inspector that can red tag and an ICPI that can't demob something. They just need to recommend to that finance section. So one of the rules of thumb that we use in Region 5, if it's mechanical, they're doing the inspection off the OF 296. Mechanical inspections are performed at ground support. And if it's compliance inspection, they're going to use one of the check lists. And these were developed by Dave Marion in Region 5 and Steve Waters in Region 4. And these are available online. And what they do is they give you the provision of where that minimum specification can be found in the agreement. So they're very helpful. So if you're doing compliance inspections, you should be using this form and the actual agreement. So the status. Region 1, they roughly have 12 qualified personnel. The numbers dependent on the intensity of their fire seasons. Many of these folks are also team members in the logistics section. The way they order ICPIs, they're called when needed. Program managers also have the ability to ramp up, and they can travel to themselves as an ICPI. And Region 1 is planning an ICPI training course April 7th through the 9th. And then contacts Kevin Erickson and Tim Murphy, and I'll give you a website where you can see where all of us program managers are located. Region 4, they have 8 qualified ICPIs, 12 trainees. Ordering their ICPIs, they're used mostly at the local unit for pre-use inspections, and only a couple are available for their incident assignments. When assignments to incidents on the ICPIs are ordered, they can be ordered by the IMTs, the Incident Management Team, and Steve Waters is the contact for Region 4. He's currently sent out a survey to identify the training needs for that region. Region 5, we currently have 12 qualified in the region. Last year we had at the 2014 Finance Academy, we hosted 32 students, and we have approximately 25 trainees. The way we dispatch our ICPIs is the order can be placed by the incident management team or by myself, and I can assign them to multiple fires. That way they can travel to different locations if they're close by. Like last year we had several fires ongoing in Northern California. When I do this, they are to travel in pairs for safety. That way we can keep tabs when they're leaving one incident to the other. And also our GACs have ordered them up for incoming resources. I've had an EQPI and an ICPI at the GAC where we'll have equipment coming in from different regions stop by there for both their mechanical and their compliance inspection. And then right now we don't have any future courses planned. Region 6, they have Foresters and BLM, 37 qualified and 40 trainees. They've got a very, very productive program. We've worked together closely on a lot of this and sharing our ICPIs. They order their ICPIs 2 ways. Dispatch Center will order for local use, and Region 6 have ICPIs on their team roster. And we're starting to see that in Region 5. Region 6 is also hosting the 262, the ICPI course the week of May 4th, and the contacts are Katie and Rom. Here's the website, and we'll make sure that's in the notes so you can look, but if you go to this website, you'll find all of us related to the fire contract equipment. Dave Haskins, our branch chief, and it goes on down to the different regions. So if you have any questions, you can just contact either one of us. There is a link there for each one of our emails. And then Shane LaBelle will be up here, on the webinar tomorrow for updates on the Viper. But this quickly just shows you what the ICPI can do to help assist your incident.
Perfect. So are there, that was sort of the lightning round, as it were, between the two of us, Sue and I. Did anybody have any questions for either of us? Let me, either the Canadian support or the ICPI. And let me see if there's any hands or questions. Yes? Pardon me? Okay. Diane Duncan is here with us, and she's going to address cell phones when you're going into a different country, about the dialing plans and so forth.
Hi. It's really easy. If a resource is going out of country, just contact your forest's mobile device coordinator. And if your forest does not have one, you can contact Bob Knopp at the regional office, and he can set up on your mobile device a temporary mobile plan that is specific to the country that you're going to, or possibly worldwide, and it's very inexpensive. They can set it up with a start date and an end date, but the important thing is if your mobile device coordinator does not set an end date, your phone will continue to accrue that higher charge. But it's very easy to do it locally.
And for those who don't have the phone coordinators with the feds, just a moment, please. They, like with the state, we just go to our local admin support, but there's only certain people that can handle our phone plan changes, so we have to contact the right person. And it's worth the money to activate it versus paying those major roaming charges. Yes?
Can it be done on a personal cell phone versus a government cell phone?
The question was, can that be done on a personal cell phone versus the government cell phone? And it can be done that way. So you'd have to contact your provider, your regular provider, your utility. And of course, I say that it can be done because it can, but you would have to make sure you have the authorization, number one, to even have the phone. And number two is that it's agency policy that you get reimbursed for things, because, you know, with our state agency, we don't generally reimburse people for personal cell phones, even though that would be a cost-effective approach. We're kind of like the Northern Canadians. Any other questions?
Yeah, Martin, there's a question from Van Cheney about, he asks, the ICP has no authority for national contract compliance inspections for caterers or showers, correct? Sorry.
For the national contracts, you actually have CORs, and the contractor officer representatives are Bill Minke, Dave Marion, and Mary Fields. Right now, those are the three, and they are recruiting for additional CORs, so if you're interested, you can contact Dave Haston or Sarah Fisher at Boise.
So the other way to answer that is yes, that's correct, because they do everything but the national contracts, because the CORs handle the national showers and the caterers.
Correct.
Good question.
Taking your personal device.
On the taking the personal device.
You always want to make sure through your resource order, again, that that's supported like a laptop or a vehicle. You have to check that first.
So Diane's comment was that you need to make sure that taking a personal device, or a personal computer for that matter, is authorized on your resource order. And an interesting thing about being mobilized through the Northwest Compact, or any compact, but typically state resources would be mobilized through the Northwest Compact in going to Canada. And at our GAC, we have a person who's a state person who is the one who coordinates the Northwest Compact usage, and they have to discuss what is going to be reimbursed. And the reason I bring that up in this group, and it's very important to keep this in mind, that this is a major difference that I didn't even touch in the slideshow, is a lot of times there's all kinds of additional support personnel, like a mobilizing dispatch office and the drivers that's taking someone to an airport. That has to be cleared with our Northwest Compact liaison, so to speak, or that local unit might end up eating those expenses because it has to be cleared.
Another update on the ICPI that I forgot to mention is Region 5 has an agreement with Region 8 for training opportunities. And last year we were able to bring 2 trainees out from Region 8. We also worked with Region 6. So if you're interested in becoming one and are afraid that you may not have the assignment availability, you could just let the other regions know, because we're very interested in bringing trainees out.
Good point.
There's a couple comments in the text questions. Rick Martin points out that in the COR has to be current agency personnel.
The COR currently has to be an agency person. Is that what the comment was? Or
My
question?
understanding is yes. The COR has to be a federally designated person. An inspector does not. And I can find out more information and get that out to everybody.
Okay. And then ADs cannot be a COR, the last I was informed, prior to Lothar retiring.
Yeah, that's correct. They can be inspectors, but they can't be a contracting operator. It's governmentally inherent position. But I will confirm that with our COs in Boise.
Okay, and then Rick Martin also said yes for food and shower.
Very good. Affirmative.
That's it.
And they could be a food unit leader. Okay. I hope we didn't offend someone and they just heard that dinging signing off, because they... Very good. And the good news is we don't get paid by the number of questions that are asked either. All right. And what we're going to do is we are kind of into a break right now, even though we just got